southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train. Going too fast now, think I ought to slow down, standing in the pouring rain.
What's going on, guys? Tristan and Tony here with the One Hell of a Life podcast for the first time.
That's right.
What's going on, Dad?
Oh, well, you know what? We're super excited to bring you guys this new outdoor show, and covers so many different types of wildlife, outdoor events and things. And we're super excited about it. And tonight, Tristan, why don't you introduce our first honorable guest?
Yeah, so tonight we have on Joe Kiefner, and he runs Migration Station that, you know, I'm sure many of you guys that listen to this podcast that are duck hunters, you know, that have TikTok or Instagram or whatever it may be, have seen his reports, whether you realize it or not, whether you're following the page or not, because, you know, it's just something that is very tangible and very informational. And we're really excited to get Joe on. And Joe, thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tonight, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. So can you kind of just go into a little bit about you, you know, and your background, and yeah, let's just start there.
Yeah, so my name is Joe Kiefner. I was born and raised in Southeast Missouri. That's actually where I cut my teeth duck hunting. Really gained a passion for it when I was about 13 years old. Went on my first duck hunt. It was about as miserable a day as you can imagine. You know, 35 degrees, hard north wind, spit and rain, but it was just warm enough where nothing was freezing. And I didn't want to buy a pair of waders. And so I borrowed some of my dad's old trout fishing waders, which are not insulated. Of course, I fell in. It was miserable, and I was hooked immediately. Just hooked. So that's kind of what got me started. And then I went to school in Louisiana. I studied engineering. I work in the oil and gas industry as an oil and gas professional. That's my 9-to-5 job. So Migration Station is just kind of a thing I'm doing as a little passion project right now. We released it out into the world last year, about 6 or 7 months ago, just to kind of see where it would go. And it's just been super well received. Super happy about that. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. That's my background. Living in Oklahoma City currently. So from Missouri, lived in Louisiana, currently in Oklahoma, kind of all over the place. But there's good duck hunting anywhere you go.
Nice. Yeah, we're originally right from across the river there in St. We were really the biggest city closest to us was St. Louis, so we weren't too far from. Southeast Missouri. But now we're living in Northeast Georgia and spent some time in Florida, so kind of done the same little bounce around, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, you said that migration started 6-7 months ago, and you know it's kind of a passion project of yours. Can you just, you know, if somebody's listening to this and they have no idea what Migration Station is, can you kind of give just a, you know, basic overview of what it is and what you do there?
Yeah. So Migration Station, first and foremost, is a waterfowl migration tracking company. So we are solely, our sole mission, our sole purpose is to try to put information into the hands of those who would use it. So whether it's here in the off season, we've been posting a lot about breeding ranges of ducks or where bands come from that are recovered in a certain area. We're just trying to get the word out there and build interest in the resource that we so cherish, which are, you know, ducks and geese. And then during the season, we try to convey as best as we can and as concisely as we can a whole plethora of information. You know, you're talking about stuff that you could have a 2-hour podcast on every day. Trying to put that into 30 seconds and just say, hey, if you're going to be hunting this week, here's what to look for. If you're in these particular areas, ducks are here, they're not there, weather events, all that sort of stuff. So really, to boil it all up, we're just trying to put the vast amount of information that exists out in the world into a quick to see and easy to understand format for people to enjoy. And hopefully, you know, if we help folks in their decision-making process around waterfowl hunting, well, that's just, you know, the cherry on top.
Yeah. And you really do hit the nail on the head on making it such a, you know, so much information jam-packed in a 30-second clip, you know, and I love that it's, you know, kind of like, I guess you do it every week, right? During the season?
Yeah, we tried to. And there are some weeks where there's more going on that warrants, you know, 2 videos a week. And there's a couple weeks during the season where it was really mild and birds were reportedly getting kind of stale. And so we kind of catered to a different story or a different narrative. But we try to post a video once a week and some sort of migration map update once a week as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I guess, and I know you can't go too much into the whole, process of how you guys go about gathering this data, but, can you just go into a little bit of that? It's really interesting stuff to be able to think, hey, we're seeing this, the duck migration numbers,
Yeah. So like you said, we're patent pending, and part of that is we can't divulge too much of the behind the scenes. But what I can say is that we just take, a lot of information that exists in public places, all across the world, or across the country, I guess you could say in this instance. And we just compile it into a format that makes it easy to understand. So instead of having to have conversations or visit sites or, have phone calls with all these different people, all these different resources, we just take information and we compile it and we put it out there into the world where folks can scroll through their phone, they can look at it for 10 seconds, and they get the general gist of what's going on.
That's awesome. Yeah, and there's never really been a time up until Migration Station where there's been something like that,
Yeah, I think that's one thing we really pride ourselves on, is that there are other folks out there doing a really good job with what I would say are like comment-based applications. Joe says the hunting's good in Oklahoma. Well, maybe Joe is in a really good spot. Or if Joe says it's bad, maybe he's not hunting on a good day. Those are valid and those are warranted applications. There's really good information to be had there. But we felt that there was a need for factual, numerical migration tracking information. So instead of saying, hey, the duck hunting is okay here, it's, hey, there was 1,000 mallards there 3 or 4 days ago. And in doing so, you kind of are filling out the rest of the picture for folks to get an idea of where are the birds truly. Because I think we all know, like, you could be sitting on a field next to 1 million ducks and not be doing really well.
That's right.
Or you could have a secret little farm pond where there's only 100 ducks and do really, really well. So numbers only half the story, but it's a part of the story that we felt was missing. And so that's the lane we tried to get in.
Cool. Very neat. So somebody knows, like, what we saw on your website, basically it's formed into 4 main pieces that you do. And it's, you have your migration reports, your migration map, your waterfowl counts, and then you have your state and historical data. Can you walk through each one of those, kind of build a visual for somebody that's listening? Like, what are you going to see when you click on that? What am I going to hear? Like your migration report video, for example. Can you kind of just walk our listeners through what each one of those what you're going to get when you see those?
Yeah, absolutely. So the migration reports that you'd find on our Instagram or TikTok, what those are is just a quick 30 to 45 second synopsis of everything going on at that point in time. Where are the birds? Where are the reports of the birds? And then what are some potential weather events that can move some things around? It's really simple. We're obviously not telling every little minutia detail or all of the story, but we're trying to keep it short and concise in a short video format to keep people engaged. Because I think there was a report out there on Google that said the average duration of somebody watching a video on like an Instagram or a TikTok platform is like 8 seconds.
Yeah.
So if you don't catch them in the first 8 seconds, you're going to lose them. And so we tried to keep it as short as possible.
Very cool.
So that's the migration reports. I would say our flagship application is our migration map. And for anybody listening in who hasn't seen it, if you can just envision a map of the United States, and across this map, there are peppered throughout little dots. And what those dots are observation points, or points where we have a data feed of some sort. And if you hover over that data, it'll tell you the information, the report date, what the count was, whatever. But then all of that kind of combines into create what is called a heat map. And what that is that if there's a certain area of the country where all of the dots are reporting, or all of the observation points are reporting a high number of birds, it'll show it a very hot or a very warm color, typically red or orange. And corresponding to that, if there's area where the ducks just haven't made it yet, or there's just not a lot in the area, those colors will be a cooler color, like a blue or a green. And so when all of this combines together, you have this map of the United States with these colors splattered throughout that kind of show you where the densest concentrations of birds are at that time.
Awesome.
Yep.
And then when you get into, you know, the waterfowl counts and state and historical data, that's basically just reports, their numbers. Are they Excels or what are those?
Yeah, so what that was is we actually beta tested prior to release to the public. And one of the bits of feedback we got was from one of my mentors duck hunting. His name is Doug. He's like, Joe, this is a really cool thing you got here talking about the map. But he's like, I'm going hunting regardless. I really don't care, you know, where the birds are. It's cool. Like, I won't argue with that. It's cool information, but like, it really doesn't matter that much to me. It's not going to inform my decision making. But what would be really nice is if I could just type in a location, St. Louis, Missouri, for example, and it would tell me all the recent reports or whatever that you have in your database for certain areas. Because I'm going to go hunting. You know, I might go hunting over here or over there. I would like to know where to go. Your map doesn't tell me that. And so what we've done is with the Waterfowl Counts Table, you just input a location and it'll give you the most recent reports from or nearest to that location, you know, kind of help inform some decision making on if you have the option to go to conservation area A or wildlife management area B, which one would you go to based on the counts at the time of the reports?
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is super cool.
I think it's a perfect example of like going back to, you know, your core group of users and just saying, hey, like what worked and what didn't, and what would you like to see and what do you not care to see? And I think what you'll find is like oftentimes the best feedback you can get is going directly to the source, and that's your customer.
As waterfowlers, we experience all kinds of extreme weather conditions. Stay bone dry and warm with Frog Togs hunting gear. You can check them out at frogtogs.com or at frogtogshunt on Instagram.
For your consumer.
Right. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you're definitely creating a navigable, navigatable platform that is so. I love it whenever you're able to get information like this and give it to me right now. You know what I mean? Because you're definitely dealing with that in society today, and that's what I love about it. I mean, it's just bam, bam. I went to go use it, and I was like, wow, boom, click, 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 click. I mean, it was that easy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, congrats to you guys on the designs. Seriously, I mean,
thanks.
That makes it awesome.
I appreciate it. I think the other one you made mention of was the state and historical data. Again, that's just another way to look at information over time. We had some feedback from some folks that they're like, hey, it'd be kind of helpful to know for a certain state, not necessarily where they're at now, but should I plan on going to Missouri in January, or should I plan on going around Christmas, or, you know, when should I think about going? And we always tell people, and I want to, you know, caveat that here is like, this is just information that, you know, we're gathering and we're trying to make and put into a useful format for folks. And sometimes it's not, you know, history doesn't always repeat itself is what I'd like to say, I guess. And, but with that in mind, we just said, okay, based on prior migratory events, prior years worth of information, and then in addition to some information that the Fish and Wildlife Services puts out regarding harvest rates by county, we create these state maps that kind of show a contour of, again, where the highest density of hunter success or waterfowl numbers are, and to help people make decisions on, you know, where they should go, when they should go, and try to tell a story around a state and less about the country as a whole, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. You know, and speaking of the, you know, flyways and the, you know, states and all that stuff, you know, we hunt, like a lot of duck hunters, we hunt a lot of different states, from, you know, our state here in Georgia to spend a lot of time in Florida and a lot of time in Arkansas. And about the time we first started seeing, you know, the migration station videos, was around, you know, we were in Arkansas, and, you know, when it was really hot there, I think it was, I can't remember when it was during the season, but even AGFC came out and said like it was a 10-year duck number high, and I saw your video come out, and you know, we saw it, right. And we had great hunts, and not to say, like you said, you can't be a field over and not have a great hunt.
We did.
But
we did that too.
Yeah.
I think we've all done that.
Yeah.
We spent a great deal of our time in the Atlantic Flyway, and we noticed you got stuff in Delaware and Maryland right now. And we were just wondering, do you have any plans as far as expanding in the Atlantic Flyway? Because obviously you have a very strong presence in the Mississippi Flyway and Central Flyways.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what you're finding there, and I want to, before I go into my, soapbox, the answer is yes. We're actively looking at ways to expand our data coverage, because that was the number one bit of feedback we got last year.
Mm-hmm.
I think like 90-something% of people said they wanted an app so they don't have to get online to view it. And 80-something% of people said we would like to see data in other states. And Migration Station is brand new. We're a baby company. We are not even a year old. And so our first year, we just did what we could to get the data that we had.
Yeah.
But I will say, going into next season, we are currently working, as I speak, on ways to get users involved to increase our data coverage, but still maintain that high level of authoritativeness or authenticity of the data.
Yeah.
So we're not going to pursue comment-based or opinion-based reports. Other folks do that really, really well. We don't need to get in that lane. But we're pursuing a way to get folks involved to help us fill out that map, fill out our migration database, but keep the information, authentic and free of bias, I guess you could say.
I think that's awesome. I mean, when you say that, it kind of makes me think of kind of the same way, like, your GPS on your phone works, whether it be with Waze or Google Maps or whatever. Like it's this feedback coming, your car is slowing down or whatever it might be. So I don't know how you're doing your system, but I'm just picturing, these hunters in Florida or wherever it might be giving you feedback and then it's coming into your system and reporting it,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat, so to speak, but you're not far off, just getting folks who are on the forefront involved. And I think we could really expand our data coverage and make this thing, not just a good, solid presence in the Mississippi Flyway, but expand to the Central, the Atlantic, and the Pacific, which all have some coverage, but probably not enough to really warrant much use out of folks. I will tell you the number one state that's requesting expansion to their state is the Carolinas, actually, on the Atlantic Flyway over there. It's I hear you guys, and trust me, I'm working on it.
Yeah, we were just talking to somebody a few weeks ago from North Carolina that was telling, really just new to us, information on just how historically, such a big duck hunting state North Carolina is. Yeah, it's very surprising, but so
you don't think of it, like you wouldn't think of it, because I don't know if it's because it's not on like YouTube much, or if it's just more concentrated, or maybe there's not as much access. I don't know that landscape very well, but like you really don't hear about it. But then you talk to the people who are out there, and the people who are out there that are big into duck hunting, they're like big into it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And one of the things that my always thought with that is, we're close to North Carolina, and the time that I've been there, it's very mountainous.
Yeah.
So it's like you just wouldn't, but the further you get to the coast, I guess just turns more into marshland, really.
Well, if it's a great duck hunting state, hurrah to all those resident duck hunters, because they have kept it a secret for years and years and years.
Hey, I don't know it well enough to say that it is or it isn't a great duck hunting state, but I stand by that. If you're lucky enough and fortunate enough to have access, I think you can find ducks just about anywhere. But I would not go as far as to say that, North Carolina could hold a candle to your Arkansas, Mississippi's, or Missouri's. I didn't make that. I did not make that statement.
Yep, that's true.
Well, what we're kind of like super excited about as you guys expand, and we talked about, you got, let's say really building that full picture on the Atlantic Flyway, like you currently do in the Mississippi and Central Flyways. With that, Tristan and I have hunted these migrations, and there's no doubt about it. What's cool about them is they're completely different, the way the birds behave, and And, like we know for a fact, it's public information that when we go hunt Central South Florida and say the first part of the second split, almost all the birds that are coming, and there's no reverse pushing. They just come.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's just what happens. And then they stay there, and they really don't. I mean, I can't wait to see somebody have some data with GPS tracking, because they really, my inclination would be they stay within like a 4 or 5 square mile area the whole time.
That or go to Cuba.
Oh, yeah.
Cuba.
Yeah, or keep on going. Yeah, they hit.
Well, I mean, I got to thinking about what you're saying. Like, there's not a whole lot more places for them to go. If they've kind of boxed themselves into a corner down in Florida.
Yeah. And they get down there like, all these crazy duck hunters, and alligators.
That's the other thing is people who duck hunt in Florida, like, my hat's off to you. You guys are hardcore gators, and me. I don't think we ever need to shake hands.
I mean, what's so contrast different, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole the wrong way, but like if we take the holy pintail, all right, you go to Arkansas, Central Flyway, whatever, you're looking for a pintail, butt up in a muddy rice field and just going to town. I mean, that's the image I see all the time.
Oh, yeah.
However, you go over the Atlantic Flyway and you're sitting in some mangroves, and here comes a pintail, and you're like, huh, what? It's just like being on a rice field and the redhead showing up. Same thing. You're just like, what's that duck doing here? But they just behave different and eat different. And it's interesting. I can't wait for you guys to expand into that.
Oh yeah. I'm excited to do that. And I think you hit the nail on the head too. Like, there's just so much more to this resource that we so enjoy besides just your stereotypical duck hunt. Like, I think my favorite type of hunting, but don't get me wrong, I like any kind of hunting. It's good time to spend with family and friends, and like, never going to argue about a good successful hunt. But like the cypress swamps of the Mississippi alluvial valley, and I know you guys got them on the Atlantic Flyway as well in certain areas. That's just what I think of when I close my eyes and think of duck hunting. It's like a big old tupelo or cypress tree, and I don't care if it's if I see one duck or 100,000 ducks, like that's the place right there. And a lot of folks have a lot of success in rice fields. And if I got an invite to go hunt one, this November, I'm going to be there for sure. Don't get me wrong, but there's just so much more to it. And I think it's for all of us to enjoy. And I'm just trying to get people more involved and, get people out there to experience it.
So cool.
Well, that's the truth, man. And, when one thing we've observed, in different flyways, like, for example, the Mississippi and the Atlantic flyways, like in the Mississippi, for example, you'll see a correlation through strong freeze lines and stuff like that with birds moving or, warming up. You start seeing a lot of like reverse pushes and start seeing teal and spoonbills and stuff like that again. And like Tony was saying a little bit earlier with Florida, we've hunted Florida on, the coldest, it was 30 degrees in Miami, and I guess it was the coldest it had been in the state in like 30 years or something. Mm-hmm. And it was the most stale duck hunting ever. And so then we started really digging into it, and there's a lot of people that are of the mindset that are just like, you get your Halloween birds, as people call them, and then you get like another push around sometime in December. And then that's really it. Like, it just doesn't get cold enough to get another good push, it seems like. But, obviously it's so different in the Mississippi Flyway.
Yeah. It's really interesting you bring that up. There was, I'm going to get into that here in a second, but I think the thing to think of when thinking about migration events of ducks is kind of two things. One, they're trying to get to their wintering grounds to eventually, bond, depending on the species, right? But then the other thing is they're just trying to survive. Like, literally, that is their number one priority, is like, just survive. That's it. Right. And when you think of that, like, there's a lot of data out there to suggest that they're probably inclined to do as little as possible to survive. Like, if they don't have to fly anywhere, if they don't have to take any risks, they have a spot where they can just go be and survive, they might not migrate. And we're not affiliated with this group, but I really appreciate the work that they do. Cohen Wild Lab is the name of the Instagram page, I believe, but they had a report maybe like a month ago where they were doing GPS tracking on a duck that stayed in Calgary all winter. Wow. And the reason that it did that is because it was hanging out on a fast moving chute of whatever river's up in Calgary. Sorry if anybody's from Calgary. I don't know my rivers like I should, I guess. But hanging out whatever river's up there in Calgary, and it was just going back and forth to a on-river grain silo, and it was just eating waste grain.
Yeah.
That thing didn't migrate. It was just hanging out like it. So it's going to do what it can to survive, and sometimes that's do nothing. But then you hit on it too. You called them Halloween birds. I'd say folks in the Mississippi Flyway would call them your Veterans Day push of mainly specs and photo migrators. But what a photo migrator is a bird that changes or that migrates based off of the changing of the photo period or the amount of sunlight in a day. It's hardwired in their brains like, hey, days are getting shorter. I know it's about.
Do you want coffee that doesn't suck? Get the Duck. Dirty Duck coffee is made specifically for the waterfowl enthusiast. Enjoy flavors like Morning Wood, Dark Dynasty, Cinnamon Teal Snickerdoodle, and First Flight to unlock the flavor that you'll enjoy in the blind for years to come. Our friends at Dirty Duck Coffee Company are now offering all Zero Duck 30 followers a 15% discount when you use code ZeroDuck15 on your next order.
To get real cold, so we need to start moving. And sure enough, come Veterans Day, if you're in Missouri or northern Arkansas, at night, go outside and listen up. You're going to hear all the speckled bellies. They're just going to show up.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the last one is obviously, your weather-related pushes, which I've been there, done that, like you guys said. Hunted in Louisiana on one of the coldest days in the last decade at that time, and it was in the teens or something like that, and nothing going on. And it's just because I guess Louisiana teens seems cold to Louisiana folks, but teens aren't that cold to a duck that's just come out of the Dakotas, right? And so they're going to go as far south as they need to go until they don't need to go any further. And so that's why, when you're that far south, sometimes it's just good to hunt weather, sometimes not just cold weather, I guess.
Right. It's funny you bring up Dr. Cohen and Cohen Wildlife Lab, because we've actually had him on the podcast twice. And most recently when we had him on, we talked about that exact same instance of that mallard you just brought up.
Okay.
And
so we're bringing it full circle then, huh?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. That's a popular mallard is what that is.
No kidding. And it's one thing that he brought up that was super interesting about a different set of data or whatever was during around Christmas when there was that really cold front that locked a lot of stuff up, because we kind of got into a similar topic about migration with him. What are you seeing with these tracked mallards and stuff? And he found that the birds there in Tennessee, even though all of their traditional places were locked up, they didn't really move away. They moved to big water, and what happened was all these hunters just started, it was basically a suicide mission for these ducks, because all they could do is go to big water because they didn't want to go any further south. And from a hunter's perspective, not looking at that data, you're just like, oh wow, cold weather, we got this big push of birds from the north. But his data actually suggests that it wasn't really that big. They were pretty much birds that were already there.
Yeah, that's really interesting you bring up, and I'm hoping that through time our migration maps will actually show that. It's ducks aren't, let's say there's 1,000 birds in a particular area. It's not that there's 100 of them in 10 different places. There's now 1,000 of them in one place, but on our map you would see that it would still show there's just 1,000 in this particular area. And so looking at the map, you wouldn't think there was a big push. It would just look more like to your point, like a consolidation. They've just all moved to an area that's open.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's I'm good.
Oh, no, I was just going to say one thing that Brad also brought up was the fact that they've went into these refuges, right? And they've shot shotguns. They've drove their four-wheelers. They've done all these things. And what they found is that really doesn't change anything. They just come right back,
Yeah.
And so, they've been working on the expansion of more land that's more refuges, because what it does is creates more traffic for the ducks, and that's really what we're after is the hunters, so it's really cool. And to be able to pull up your data, right? Because you're watching like and I'm not trying to say anything wrong about anybody's other migration maps, but you watch some other ones and you see some stuff and you're seeing it from such a big general perspective, you know.
Right.
And when Tristan was showing me these hot zones on your thing, this duck hunting season, I mean, that's really cool as a duck hunter to be able to pull that local of amount of information up.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and like I said, we saw a lane that didn't exist, or at least we didn't think it existed, and we pursued it. And what started out as a little passion project of mine, just pulling in, information for a couple states, we were like, you know what, let's just give this a shot and see where it goes. And like I said, first season we're in, we're super excited how it's gone, and fingers crossed, stay tuned. Hopefully we get information for those folks in the Carolinas.
There you go. One thing that I just wanted to throw in here, since we're having you on and you look at a lot of this data, is we talked to people in Arkansas, and I don't know what's recorded on this, but back in the 70s or 80s, they talk about barely ever seeing a snow goose, or they remember when they first showed up, or when speckled belly started showing up. Do you have any data that you've seen about when that started to happen, or why why are these geese all of a sudden just coming down to Arkansas and loving it?
Yeah, I would say I don't have knowledge or information around snow geese or speckled bellies in particular, but I actually have my own experience around Canada geese in southern Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar, just unfortunately the other way around. Southern Illinois, northern Kentucky, those areas used to be the hot spot for Canada geese.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, if you go look at I think it's our midwinter survey application, you can go to Canada geese, southern Illinois or Illinois, and you see it just like clockwork. One day in the 80s, they just stopped showing up. We're talking one particular area used to have 200,000, 300,000 snow geese across, 3 or 4 counties. And at the snap of the finger, they're just not there anymore.
Wow.
And I think there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of opinions out there as to why that occurred. And I think if I'm a betting man, what you'll find is that we think of Canada geese as one species. We think of mallards as one species, and they are, genetically, I guess. But in reality, you have these populations that are kind of all moving together to different areas of the country. And I think what you'll find is that these GPS studies that folks are doing are going to be critically important for understanding why birds started going to where they're going and why they stopped going to certain areas that they'll inevitably stop going to. And they'll be able to better correlate that. So, I think one thing that's no secret is Louisiana used to be a hot spot for ducks, and it's not what it once was. There's still some fantastic hunting down there, don't get me wrong, but it's just, if you go look at the numbers, this is the data speaking, there's just not as many ducks there as there once were. And I think that coincides with the amount of marsh habitat that's been lost, the amount of cropland that's been converted over to sugarcane. It's an important crop, not hating on it, but it's not rice, and we all know ducks like rice. And you can start pointing to things like that, but this GPS tracking that really is taking hold here in the past few years, I think you'll really be able to point to why those things are happening. And I think that's why it's so important that folks are doing them.
Yeah, for sure. I guess kind of in that same vein, you hear a lot of people that, ducks are, shifting to the Central Flyway and, out of the Mississippi Flyway, which is kind of similar to what you were talking there with Louisiana and stuff. Do you have any data that you've seen as far as that, or is that just more people are hunting in the Central Flyway? And, is it just hype, or do you think there's actually a decent amount of birds that are pulling from the Mississippi Flyway?
I think I don't have the hard and fast data or the answers, but just a guy talking to, just having a conversation. There's a lot of ducks that frequent the Central Flyway that I think more than anything, people just didn't realize. I think with the advent of social media, YouTube, I think there's just more of a spotlight being shown on the rest of the country. Like I'm surprised by it when I tell people, like, I think one of the number one hunting destinations in the country would be the Sacramento Valley of California. And people don't really think about California as being a top hunting destination, but it really is. And I think it's just because it's not on the minds of everyone. It's not Northeast Arkansas.
Right.
People just don't think about it. As far as the data is concerned, we have anywhere from 3 to 5 years up to 20 years worth of data in our migration database across probably 20 or so states. And from what I can tell, it doesn't appear that there's been a big shift or push one flyway or the other. Now, we don't have all the information out there in the world, and I would never claim to say that we do. But I think there's just more of a spotlight being put onto that flyway, and I think it's getting some attention. And I think that's maybe the reasoning there.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about it?
I tend to think kind of the same thing. You hear people like our good buddy that runs a outfitter in Northeast Arkansas. He says things, it's not, the way it used to be, which, in Northeast Arkansas, it may not be. But you hear a lot of people like, oh, Arkansas ain't the way it's supposed to be, used to be or whatever. Go over to Oklahoma, go over to Kansas. And, we've had just some incredibly stupid hunts in Northeast Arkansas and rice fields. And I'm just like, what more would you want? I tend to think it's more hype, and people just have bad experiences. And then, let's just, that's an easy thing to say, if you had a good one in Kansas and a bad one in Arkansas.
Yeah. And I think one thing that the Central Flyway probably has going for it that maybe skews the social sentiment, if you will, is that for sure, be it water laws, access to water, and we don't need to get into politics here, but water is a lot more, not scarce, but it's not nearly as prevalent as it is in Arkansas. So like there are certain areas of Arkansas that anywhere you drive down a county road, there's just water everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ducks there. And I know in my part of the world in Oklahoma, you can have a really, I'm talking world-class duck hunt over a pond that's a half acre.
Yeah.
And that's because, there's not any more or less ducks here. I don't know that number, but I can tell you there's about, 1 million times less water. And that probably, there's probably something to that. If there's less water for them to go, they're going to be more concentrated. You might have a more successful hunt. So I think that's one thing that Kansas and Oklahoma and some of the other central states have going for it in terms of hunter success is there might not be more ducks, but there's less water, and that might be to the hunter's benefit. That's just
Our partners at Huntwise are offering an exclusive discount for Zero Duck 30 followers. As an elite member, some of the features you'll immediately gain access to are Huntcast, Windcast, peak kill times, property lines, owner information and phone lookup, 250 map layers, unlimited offline maps, 3D maps, social media, and on top of it all, save up to 50% off some of the top hunting brands in the industry. Download and explore the #1 hunting tool set today and save 20% by using code DUCK30.
Just a guess, but I think there's probably something to that.
Well, and it's amazing too, I like to refer to this the same way as like, you can be in a deer stand, right? And I've hunted with people in the same property and, not a couple hundred yards from each other. And somebody can be like Tristan one year, just come back 3, 6, 4, 9, 12, every set. And I'm like, I didn't see anything for 10 sets in a row or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Same thing is true with duck hunting. And, we, on this same land that we have had, and public land too, but on the same piece of private property, we have seen it be crazy. And a half mile from there, dead. And we've been there opening day. We didn't even raise our gun, so there can be so much local shift. And that's what's so cool about what you guys are all doing is for us hunters to be able to access that data.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. And you're not wrong. I mean, we've all seen it. We've all done it. A spot that, has just been absolutely on fire for a week straight. One day it just dries up, or a spot that, you're going to hunt and you say, I'm just really wanting to get out in the marsh or get out in the woods. I don't have any high expectations. I just want to go out, just go out and be out there. And then you come back and you're like, I was only there for 30 minutes. It took me longer to put on my waders than it did for me to actually hunt.
Well, and the point I want to make that ties into that whole thing is, you could be a half acre away or an acre away or 100, a quarter mile away, and it's just not hitting. The ducks just don't want to be in your area. And you could be one of those people, which we have been those people that went, the ducks are all gone.
Yeah.
They're gone. And every duck you see, those are all migrators. They're going away, and you're just, you're a pessimist, and you're just negative Nelly, I say. And, but it's so easy to do that, to make those excuses when really it could be just something so minor.
Right. Well, I don't even think it's excuses. I in no way, shape, or form would want to invalidate your experience. Like if you had a bad hunt, that stinks. I wish it were better.
Yep.
And I think that feedback's valid, but I think that is as zoomed in as you can get. We're talking about that one field and that one town and that one county. We are way zoomed in, and it was just a bad experience there. But if you zoom out, you can still say, hey, I had a pretty poor experience here, but in the area in general, keep the faith because, according to the facts, they're still around. It's like, don't give up hope yet.
Yep.
That's right. It's kind of one of those things where you can't kill them from the couch, that cliche saying, but you never know what's going to cause them to shift, from that field to all of a sudden in the field you're in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Unless your blind has a couch in it, in which case, you need to get in touch with me because I need to go hunt with you because you are living a much higher on the hog than I have from my hunting experiences.
That is true. Yeah, that saying does not hold true, I guess, with duck hunting with as much as it does with deer hunting.
There's exactly. There's blinds out there, right? There's spots out there where it's like, this is as nice as my living room.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. You see those guys, off cooking breakfast and, all kinds of stuff. Got a pool table down there and who knows.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if I have anything more than, my Doritos or whatever, I'm just tickled.
I know, right? Somebody, remembered to bring hot coffee. That's like a luxury.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Well, cool, man. Well, I think that's pretty much, what we got. Is there anything that, you want to touch on, new stuff coming from you guys or anything you want to touch on?
Yeah, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do that. So really, two main things is we had a fantastic first season, but we got a lot of positive feedback. The engagement from our community was really, really positive and it was really well received. But, we have a lot of questions or I guess desires from folks for us to release an app. We are going to be releasing an app sometime this year. I don't know exactly when, but that is on the development plan, and as well as expanding our data coverage. We're going to come up with a way to get folks involved in adding information into our migration database and keeping it free from bias, free from opinions. And in doing so, the migration map that used to be zoomed in pretty exclusively on the Mississippi Flyway, we hope throughout time is really going to expand nationwide. So be patient with us. You guys have been awesome as a community, and we've got really cool things on the horizon. So stay tuned for that.
That's awesome. And I can't wait for that, aspect of things to come into play. I think that's going to be really neat to tune into.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And can you tell everyone, where can they get in touch with you? Where can they find you guys?
Yeah. So we have a website, www.migrationstationusa.com. And then all of our socials, which are mainly Instagram and TikTok, are just at Migration Station USA. I would say Instagram is where we put the vast majority of our really cool visuals. We actually have a video posting tomorrow, which I guess sometime in early April. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be it's going to be kind of like a migration update, the 30-second one, but it's going to be about bands that have been recovered in a certain part of Minnesota where they came from. And there's going to be some really interesting, fun facts out of that. So,
wow.
Follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok if you care to. And then our website's where we host our applications.
Well, shoot, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing that. That's going to be cool.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, good deal. Well, thank you so much, Joe.
Yes, Joe, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time.
Thank you guys.
And to help inform us. And man, we hope to have you back on sometime for sure. As you gear up and get ready to hit hit the ground running, as they say in October there, and we're excited to see you ramp up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm never going to say no to talking about ducks. So you just let me know when and I'll be there.
Well, that sounds great. We love these podcasts that you get into, like we said earlier, some of that duck nerd stuff. So,
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and congratulations on, I guess, episode number 1 under the new name. One hell of a life. There you go. Congrats on that.
Thank you. And actually, today is technically the 1-year anniversary that we've been doing the podcast. So you're actually the 52nd episode.
Yep.
Well, like I said, I am shocked that I just kind of fell into this, and I feel extremely grateful. So thank you for reaching out. I'm really happy to have been a part of it.
No, that's awesome. We just want to help.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, and we just want to help our duck hunters, our fellow friends out, and help you all have an easier hunt. And this gentleman right here has figured something out.
I appreciate it, guys. You guys take care, and thanks for having me on.
Yes.
All right, take care. Have a good evening.
Yes, sir. Have a good evening.
Yep. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was a fun one.
Yeah, that was good.
I've been southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train. Going too fast now, think I'll slow down, standing in the pouring rain.